from, just like clouds have the power to block the power of the sun. The power of the sun doesn't change, but our experience of the power of the sun may change depending upon the thickness of the clouds or a clear sky. So we want the clear sky. The teaching that Kapila is giving to Devahuti is how to get to the stage where it's clear sky. And that's how the chapter ends. It's a very nice ending. You can take a sneak preview, look at the end of this chapter. It's really nice. And Kapila is speaking in his first person singular, and he is very pleased when then he describes the characteristics of one who approaches him and approaches others who are in his service with a certain regard, and worships him and offers all respect to those who are representative of him, the Vaishnavas. It's a very nice chapter. So now, another language that describes these four, a kind of ostentatious, there's a show of devotional service, worshiping the deity, but the fullness of that is not experienced. The fullness, a pure devotee worshiping a deity, because we're pure devotees worship deities. Those who are on the statement that deity worship is recommended for those who are on the beginning stage, the Kanishta stage. But it's not that those that are on the Uttama stage don't worship deities. That's not so. They worship deities in a way that those that are in the Kanishta stage don't have the experience of. And why do they do it? Because the scripture enjoins that they do. It's right in this chapter. Kapila is enjoining all these cautions about worshiping a deity, but it's imitation worship. Then he goes on to say, still you should worship. Worship in this way. What he says is, worship to the maturity of your worship, where you can see the deity form and you can see the manifestation of that deity form in your heart as Paramatma. And see that Paramatma in the heart of all living entities. Continue your deity worship till you get to that standard. Now the bell rings. You're beginning devotional service. Wow, that's high, isn't it? Devotional service is high. He particularly, commentary speaks of karma mishra bhakti. Bhakti, but bhakti mixed with karma. I'm doing because, karma. I'm doing something to get something. Karma mishra bhakti. And benefits will come to me from doing this. Along with spiritual, material benefits. I won't say no because I want material benefits. Karma mishra bhakti. There's a stage where there's no mishra. It's just shuddha. Nice. And then there's a power of bhakti effort. And then there's the conscious adjustment or realignment of our motivation, our intention when engaging in not just worship of the deity on the altar, but everything else that our life is made up of. A conscious and it built in. So there's effort and mercy. We had this discussion the other evening. How much of it is effort? How much of it is mercy? It's a combination. When Krishna sees the effort, Krishna may remove some of the clouds and shine more brightly. And then we feel encouraged and so forth and so on. Internal taste disappears and is replaced by something external. Then the second stage, practices that bring no interchange or result. We discussed that. Running when you're not moving at all, or chanting and reading, and you don't seem to be progressing. How many years can one do that? A lot of years. We could add up how many years of devotional service collectively in this room. How many years? Or any one of us, how many years? And honestly evaluate how much progress are we making? Some. But is it what we hear from the scripture or what we have the anticipation? The stairway and the elevator comparison. Are we on the stairway or are we in the elevator? So take the stairway. That's okay. And little steps, little steps, little steps. But consciously continue to make little steps. And those conscious little steps should be purposeful. In one sense, from Rupa Goswami's definition, so that Krishna is pleased. We want to see Krishna smile. At least know from scripture and from our spiritual authorities, Krishna is pleased. We want that. And to the degree there's focus on Krishna should be pleased, it's just like Jamuna Jivan's comment yesterday about his occupation. In the one sense, it's maintaining the family. In a broader sense, it's that gift that Krishna's, or gifts, plural, that Krishna's given, and I'm using those in Krishna's service. And for a Shuddha Bhakta, besides the Sadhana Bhakta, the Shuddha Bhakta, that's their experience. That which is in relation to Hari, I'm using in service to Hari. And everything else. Krishna's house, Krishna's family, Krishna's. That's the goal. That's the theme of this chapter. And of the theme of devotional service. Everything belongs to Krishna. Everything is from Krishna. It's Krishna's, and to live one's life that way. There's the sadhana to get there, and then there's the sadhya when we are there. And then there's this obstacle that's standing in the way, according to Kapila's teaching. Then this alienation topic, we'll be touching on this topic today, alienation. Feeling, bina drishya, seeing oneself separate from others, being in the midst of an audience and feeling lonely, etc. Not just an audience, but, an assembly of whatever. Or even being with someone. I know some devotees that share this expression. They don't, as much as they try, they don't seem to be able to make a personal, meaningful connection. This and that and the other and the other and the other, and they feel lonely. And it's not a nice feeling. But so this is a stage of, why is that sense of repelling or pushing away? Dvesha. And then finally, hostility, vilification. I don't feel protected, I'm going to protect myself, or I want to be an enjoyer, and so I'm going to, get things that are interfering with my enjoyment out of the way. Look out, here I come. And a little bit like, not necessarily with everyone, but it's possible. I've seen devotees do that. You pick somebody for whatever your radar says, here's the somebody. You pick that somebody and go after that somebody because they're interfering with your happiness, your peace and your contentment. And it's a continuation, a darkening of the cloud that covers the sunlight. So the solution Kapila Dev offers, this is now, we're ready for part 2, the cure of envy. Now, we went from 25 to 27 because we're going to circle back and touch 26. But here's 27. Here's the therefore. Therefore means a conclusion of everything that was said before. Therefore, ataha. Through charitable gifts and attention. Charitable gifts and attention. We'll hear different descriptions of charitable gifts and attention, as well as through friendly behavior and by viewing all to be alike, one should propitiate me, who abide in all creatures as their very capital S self. Not a small s, but a capital S. So sadhu sangha. And with sadhu sangha, then the giving of gifts. The giving of gifts can look like this, a package with a ribbon and a bow on it. But it can be other forms or manifestations of giving gifts. But it's a principle. You receive something, you give something. I'm going to tell a little story. It's a story I like. I heard this directly from Bhakti Tirtha Swami, who said, when he was young, he grew up in a ghetto in Cleveland, and his family was very poor. And one time, he brought a friend home from school, and the friend had a torn shirt. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami's mother said, go to your closet, you have 2 shirts, give him one of those 2 shirts. A lesson of charity. He didn't have an abundance of shirts. And how, many people have more than 1 shirt. We have more than 2 shirts. But there's so it's a friend. Wasn't just, go to whatever those charitable places and give your extra shirt. So you'll have only 1. That's something. Sometimes that happens. But purposeful. Giving a gift to a friend. To someone who you hold some feelings for. So his mother was teaching him charity. And he lived his life that way. Not just gave shirts, but he gave his life. Because that's a way to live. Nice, I like that story. So be charitable. And, in principle, we often hear, there's 4 ashrams. One of them is the Grihastha ashram. The Grihastha ashram is supposed to maintain the other 3. And so Grihasthas are supposed to be charitable. Whatever God has given you as Grihastha, be charitable. Prabhupada's comment is that the wealthy Grihastha, he likes looking at his money. He just likes to look at it. His happiness is to look at it and then think how I can get some more. That's the greedy, self-centered person who's married but not really Grihastha. They're Grihamedi. They're in another category. But a Grihastha is one that doesn't do that. See, it's the same vision. The same vision is everything belongs to Krishna. And I see Krishna in the heart of others. So what can I do? I'm this Grihastha that has X, whatever X might be. or 3x or 15x or whatever it is that grahasta has. What can I do in service to the Supreme Person to make a benefit to others? So gifts can be money, but gifts can be many things. Wisdom. Receive it and give it. And what happens when you receive it and give it? It grows. It's like magic. It's like, give away some gold, and what's in the gold chest increases just by keep giving and keep giving and keep giving, and the gold increases. It's mystical. So at least in terms of knowledge, and then other things that are one of the themes of the chapter. Back to what we said at the beginning, this initial phrase from Priti Sandarbha is everyone has as a goal to increase happiness and diminish suffering. And the fullness of happiness and the fullness of all suffering is gone is possible only when there's Priti for the Supreme Lord. And then there's how you get there, which is the topic of this chapter also. So here, this is one of his prime remedies of cure. There's being charitable and attention, like, be present with the other person when you're with the other person. Don't try to not be distracted. It's like, talking to someone and texting while you're talking to someone. Called distracted. That little device or technology can be really distracting, and it disturbs relationships. A thoughtful person doesn't do that. When you're present, you don't do that. When you're distracted, you may do that. So be present, give attention to, and it starts with how you chant the holy name. Be attentive, be present. We're calling Krishna's name. This is a little japa seminar or sound vibration. When you're chanting, you're in calling. In Krishna's hearing. And instantly, not only he's hearing, but he's there. And while you're calling and Krishna's there, your attention is elsewhere. How's Krishna going to feel? Because he doesn't really want me. Or it's imitation chanting. He's doing because he sees others doing and he hears that you're supposed to do, so he does, but it's imitation. It's not the real thing. And then, so be present. So this is that second one, attention. It's simple language, but the message is powerful. As well as through friendly behavior, and viewing all to be alike. Not externally, but internally. Part and parcel of Supreme, that Krishna's part and parcel. That's on the spiritual platform. The material platform differences. We discussed this yesterday. One should appreciate me. So the object of all those above things is that Krishna will be pleased, who abide in all creatures as their very self. Here's Srila Prabhupada's purport. It should not be understood that because the Supersoul is dwelling within the heart of a living entity, the individual soul becomes equal to him. That's Mayavad idea. The equality of the Supersoul and the individual soul is misconceived by the impersonalist. Here it is distinctly mentioned that the individual soul should be recognized in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The method of worshiping the individual soul is described here as either giving charitable gifts or behaving in a friendly manner, free from any separatist outlook. Separatist outlook was that Bina Drisha or Bina Drik, the separatist. The impersonalist sometimes accepts a poor individual soul as Daridra Narayan, meaning that Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has become poor. This is a contradiction. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is full of all opulence. He can agree to live in or with a pure soul or even with an animal. But this does not make him poor. I mean, in one sense it's subtle, in the other sense it's really so obvious, blatantly obvious. Purport continued. Two important words in the continuation of that purport. There are two Sanskrit words used here, mana and dana. Mana means how we think about another, mana, and dana means charity. So the lesson is unpacking his message. Look up to the superior and be compassionate, dana, to those less fortunate. Mana indicates the superior, and dana indicates one who gives charitable gifts or is compassionate toward an inferior. We cannot treat the Supreme Personality of Godhead as an inferior who is dependent on our charitable gifts. So it's mana to the Supreme Lord. When we give charity, it is to a person who is inferior in his material or economic condition. Charity is not given to a rich man. Similarly, it is, unless you're wanting to flatter, that happens. Similarly, it's especially stated here that mana, or respect, is offered to a superior, and charity is offered to an inferior. There was this discussion yesterday, see equally, but we make distinctions. So which is it? If you see equally, then you're not making distinctions. If you're making distinctions, you're not seeing equally. They're mutually contradictory or incompatible. But we're supposed to do both. It's on material, spiritual. The living entities, according to different results of fruitive activities, may become rich or poor. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unchangeable. He is always full of six opulences. More on the same purport, 27. Treating a living entity equally does not mean treating him as one would treat the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Compassion, these are the words in the verse, compassion and friendliness do not necessitate falsely elevating someone to the exalted position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We should not, at the same time, misunderstand the super soul situated in the heart of an animal, like a hog, and the super soul situated in the heart of a learned Brahmana are different. The super soul in all living entities is the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. By his omnipotency, he can live anywhere, and he can create his Vaikuntha situation everywhere. That is his inconceivable potency. Therefore, when Narayana is living in the heart of a hog, he does not become a hog, Narayan. He is always Narayana and is unaffected by the body of the hog. Now, how to take this? These are elevated concepts. How to take elevated concept and make it so that anybody and everybody and new people reading Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purports can understand this elevated teaching. The teaching is elevated. How to say it in such a way that persons that aren't so refined can understand it. The language, Prabhupada was expert with language. He was, as he said, I like reading my books. When I'm reading my books, I understand. This was not written by me. This is Krishna speaking. He was an instrument of the Supreme. Nimitta matram. Now we're going to some other references to support all of this. This is Bhaktivinoda Thakur. While analyzing anarthas, or the unwanted things within the heart, he writes or says, envy is the most dangerous one. There's unwanted things, anarthas within the heart. Why is it the most dangerous? Because it is completely opposite to love. As long as there is envy, one cannot develop love for Krishna. Incompatible. We want to love Krishna, and Krishna happens to be everywhere and in everything. Therefore, loving Krishna and hating anyone or anything else, totally contradictory. So a conventional Rajneesh, not exactly a bhakta, but he has some ideas. Drop envy and jealousy, otherwise there is no possibility. Because love cannot exist where envy and jealousies exist. And when envy is there, material existence increases and increases and increases, according to the degree of the envy, especially. To obtain love of God, one has to get rid of the disease of envy. So we want that cure, right? Therefore, in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said, Paramo nirmatsaranam satam. One has to get rid of envy to understand Srimad Bhagavatam. Because to understand Srimad Bhagavatam means to understand and love Krishna. Pretty simple. Very simple. In principle. So now further Bhaktivinoda Thakur. You see a nice tree on the left side? Kind of a skinny tree, but at the bottom, the root, that's avidya. And the avidya tree, vidya means ignorance, it has branches. And there are categories of those branches. Raga, dvesha, asmita, and abhinivesh. So asmita means one way to define it. Conceited, egoistic pride. Or pride, but some adjectives. Conceited, egoistic pride. Abhinivesha, deeply absorbed in trivial pursuits. Something small and insignificant one becomes obsessive about it. That's a fruit. These four branches, raga and dvesha, we'll hear more about. It's pretty simple. Attraction and repulsion. Absorption in trivial things. Conceited, egoistic pride. They have it's the tree of material life, and their categories, anarthas, rooted in avidya, or ignorance. So naturally, devotional service, bhakti, is very powerful, but there are forces that block that powerfulness. And the origin of all is ignorance. Now, we're going to go a little plunge, a little different than these four that we heard before, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur's way of analyzing, and is according to scriptural injunctions or teachings, four categories of tattvas, or truths that are misconstrued. Here's the first of the four. Tattva vibhrama. There's not understanding ourselves. That's a nice start. Sva tattva. And then para tattva, understanding the Supreme. This begins with misunderstanding the Lord's basic quality. What's his basic quality? Vishnu tattva. He enters everywhere. Sound familiar with what the teachings of Kapila is presenting? He's existing everywhere, and for the Kanishta, he's on the altar. Period. I've heard something about existing everywhere, but I don't honor it, I don't respect it, I don't acknowledge it, I don't act accordingly. And therefore, I think very special about myself. Problema. Mucho problema. So the Vishnu feature of the Supreme, the Vishnu Tattva or Paratattva, is missed. Sadhana Tattva, one doesn't understand what sadhana is, or they may have a misconception of what sadhana is, and do that, or by misconception, not having a proper conception. So we need a proper conception. Where do we get the proper conception? From spiritual teachings, from a spiritual teacher. It helps, not just helps, it's imperative to have a proper spiritual teacher to make sure that we've understood the spiritual teachings. Or Sambandha Gyan, like ABC. Sambandha, the relationship between all things and the source of all things. That's the proper start. So sadhana is to act in that relationship that towards all things. Us towards the Supreme, and things towards the Supreme, and other persons in relation with the Supreme. Sadhana tattva. And sadhya, the goal. So those are 4 categories of tattva vibrama. Vibrama is illusion. More. Here's an interesting detail. I'm pausing so you can be a little extra attentive because it's subtle. You ready for subtle? Here we go. Madhvacharya is one of the original acharyas to whom we trace our spiritual lineage. But his understanding is very different. How is it very different? We say that God is both the nimitta and upadan karana, or the efficient and material cause. If you don't know what those terms are, read in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it's very clear. You may have to read it a few times. But both the material and the efficient cause. Madhvacharya says that God is only nimitta. According to him, matter is different from God. Right? 2. In fact, some detail. 5 differences. Panchabheda, that's his teaching. Difference between God and the living entity. Difference between one living entity and another living entity. Difference between the living entity and matter. Difference between God and matter. And difference between matter and matter. Panchabheda. So, God and that which come from him, there's difference. Therefore, according to him, he is only the nimitta matram. This leads to important ethical consequence. What's that? One will behave differently if one thinks that something is different from the Lord or connected to him. But there's difference, therefore the attitude is very different. It's contention. It can lead to contention. We have to understand sadhana and sadhya properly. We're not in contest with or in opposition to Madhvacharya or in his line, but there's a distinction given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's simultaneously one and different, not only difference. The goal of the Madhva Sampradaya is moksha. And the goal of the Gaudiya Sampradaya is prema. And there's an intimacy in that prema. It's not just Vaikuntha. Go to that spiritual place where there's no anxiety, and there's you, and there's Narayana. And it's it. And the goal of Gaudiya line is different. That was a sidebar. You can meditate on that distinction if you like. And that's a comparison with the Madhva Sampradaya. Here's the Sri Sampradaya, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. 5 basic truths. Sva Sarup, that we have our own intrinsic identity. Para Svarup, the Lord has his identity. Purushartha Swarup, Purushartha. What does Purushartha mean? Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Purushartha. So that's the highest goal, moksha. Upaya Swarup, identifying the method of attaining that goal. And Virodhi Swarup, identifying those things that obstruct the goal, not understanding or mistaken understanding of what is contrary to devotional service. If you don't know what the obstacles are, you can do obstacles and think I'm devotional service. So you have to know those are the 5 tattvas. And similarly, moksha. There's a different way of getting there, but from material contamination to no longer material contamination in service to the Supreme. That's something that's shared in all sampradayas. Leaving behind and entering into the realm where there's only devotional service, Shuddha Bhakti. And there are different varieties of Shuddha Bhakti. The goal of Goloka is different than Vaikuntha. They're both transcendental, but there's a distinction at the same time. Very important to understand what is the offense that blocks our devotional service and what is the nature of aparad. There's a reason for going into all of this. It's kind of like distinct from the main topic of chapter 29, but it's not really. Basically, what's the nature of something that is contrary to devotional service? And again, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says it's ignorance. And from this ignorance comes asat Krishna. Now, these are teachings of our acharyas that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is taking and presenting in his own eloquent and, in one sense, simplified manner. So what's this asat Krishna? Because the first one was tattva vibrama, having a misconception. Asat Krishna, the desiring for something material, or asat, not real. If we don't understand who we are, what reality is, then naturally desiring something unreal appears in the heart. It's very simple. So what are some of those asats? Material, heaven, liberation, mystic powers. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya are replete with all this, and the Bhagavatam is also. These desires stand as impediments between the Supreme Lord and our goal. Excuse me, the Supreme Lord or our goal and us. Second. Third, aparad. Uh-oh. When you hear the word aparad, it's uh-oh. Because we develop this Krishna, insatiable thirst. That's Krishna means thirst. Insatiable thirst for material enjoyment of those 4 categories, we develop certain philosophies and practices. And the natural consequence is aparad. Why do we make aparad? We want to enjoy. Someone comes in our way, and we offend them. Get out of my way. Does it happen? It happens. Of all people, devotees come in our way of enjoyment the most because we associate with devotees the most, hopefully. Because of thirst for enjoyment, one of those four categories, we develop an offensive attitude. When we understand that we are servants, it goes away, or it diminishes and then goes away. This offense is completely against the spirit of enjoyment. So here comes Bhaktivinoda Thakur with some more lists. Four categories: Nama Parad, Seva Parad, Vaishnava Parad, Jiva Parad. Yikes. We have to have right conceptions of each of these things. And according to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a root is the number one, Nama Parad. Because Nama Parad can take care of the other three. You avoid the offenses in chanting, and you can avoid the offenses in the other three, because it's built within the offenses against chanting. And now, last but most, not least, Hridaya Dorbalyam, weakness of heart. Hridaya means heart, and Dorbalyam, Bala means strength, and Dorbalyam, weakness. Hridaya Dorbalyam, weakness of heart. Of the four, this is the grossest manifestation of anarthas within our heart. Starts with very subtle manifestation of ignorance. Then grosser and grosser and grosser. Similar to those stages of envy. Grosser and grosser, darker and darker. So here comes some more Sanskrit terms. It's okay. It's just a way of analyzing persons that are very, very refined in scripture and understanding of things. They explain it this way. Tucha sakti, asakti. Tucha, attachment to trifle things. Remember that one? Abhinivesh, attachment to trifle things. It's another Sanskrit term. Tucha. Asakti is attachment, and tucha, it means insignificant. Attachment to little ambitions, attachment to position, small desires, attachment to ridiculous things in the heart. If we analyze the attachments, the grossest attachment we have in our heart is the offense that someone did to us. Beware. Kutinati, deceit or fault finding. Those that have been around for a while, you've heard these terms many times. Kutinati, fault finding. Or deceitful behavior. You say something and you mean something else. Or you don't say what you mean. You deceive others. Matsarya. Oh, there it is. Envy. And so envy and pride, they're like brothers. Sra pratishtata, pride. Envy and pride. We'll hear some more. Grossest manifestation of ignorance is envy and pride. The result of this is suffering. Very, very difficult to overcome. But, it starts small and just grows. And as it grows, it becomes more difficult. And the persons who are proud. I was appreciating something from Radhika Raman's presentation in ISV. Some of you have heard, probably many of you have heard it. I've heard it multiple times. The turning of the topics of Shastra. So he used the metaphor of the churning of the ocean of milk. And then from the churning of the ocean of milk, one of the things that came out was poison. And then the demigods and the demons were terrified. Ah! So they turned to Lord Shiva. Help! So he held the poison within his throat. So his throat turned blue. Nilakanta. So Vaisheshika Prabhu asked at the end of the class, what's the poison? And the answer is pride. Because what comes from the ocean is knowledge. What comes from the ocean of milk, comes from, the milk ocean, the personality of Godhead gives knowledge. But those who have knowledge and have a misuse of that knowledge, it can easily become prideful. So some of us have been to universities, probably most of us, or at least if you're of age, you've been to a university. And one of the things that you find is people that are very knowledgeable and very proud of their knowledge. And it stinks. It smells bad. To find someone, so that's the poison, pride. Have knowledge and be proud of that knowledge. So have ignorance, you can be proud of your ignorance, but that's another pride. But even with something that's valuable, one can be proud of one's wealth, proud of one's beauty, the opulences that come from pious activities, and then become proud. Hridaya Dorbalyam. Here's Jiva Goswami. I like this. Jiva Goswami speaks or writes about this message in the following way. The gradations of envy. These two acharyas, Vishwanath and Jiva, they go into it and go very deeply into it. So one of his going deeply into it messages is a reference from Agni Purana, which he writes about in Bhakti Sandarbha in relation to the father of Shravan Kumar. Who's Shravan Kumar? Shravan Kumar is the son of some blind parents. Shravan Kumar was his name. And the circumstance described is one time King Dasarath was in a hunting expedition, and he had this mystic ability that he didn't have to see the target. He could just hear a sound and then shoot an arrow and pierce the target by sound. So he heard the sound of what he thought by sound was an animal drinking water from a reservoir of water. So he shot an arrow. And then he went to where the arrow, when he shot the arrow, he heard the sound of someone screaming. That was Shravan Kumar. And Shravan Kumar was a young boy who was gathering water for his blind parents. And now his body is pierced with an arrow, and he's going to die. Before he dies, he speaks to the king, Dasarath. Please take care of my old and blind parents. I came to bring them water, and they depend on me as their only support. You know the pastime. So Dasarath was shocked. And what did he do? He didn't know where the parents were. The boy knew where the parents were. He picked up the boy before he died, and the boy led him to where his parents were. When he found his parents, he placed the body of Shravan Kumar on the lap of his father, and then explained to the father what happened. Honestly, this is what happened. The father lamented seriously. He's blind, and his wife is blind, and their son was their only hope, serving them very faithfully. And now he's dying. So he cursed the king. As I die from separation from my son, you too will die in the same way. Ooh. King Dasarath knew, I'm bound by my actions. Now, Agni Purana describes something that Valmiki Ramayana doesn't describe, and that was the father began to reflect, because the father was a learned person. It's Agni Purana. The father reflected on why this may have happened, because there's always a cause behind misfortune. So, according to Bhakti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami writes, these are the two contemplations. Listen carefully, because it directly plays into our topic. One, here's the Sanskrit from Agni Purana. Perhaps I once saw the deity of the Lord and thought of it as stone, Shila Bhuti. Right in the first line, Shila Bhuti. Kritakim Va. Considering it, the deity, merely a well-decorated stone. This is a serious offense, as the Lord can manifest anywhere. And then Agni Purana says he thought there's another possibility. Perhaps a Vaishnav once came before me, decorated by signs of Vishnu Bhakti, Tilak, etc. And at that moment, I did not pay obeisances in my mind and respect him properly. Offense or offense. And so from offense, there's a reaction. And it's a law of nature. There's not maybe. It's a law of nature. With offense, there's consequences. So going back to those 4 verses, 21 through 25, in this chapter 29, offense, 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 offense. And consequences. One of the consequences, in principle, is the power of bhakti for that person is blocked. The worship of the deity, full effect, is blocked. Offense, and then degrees of offense, and those 4 categories of envy. The envy doesn't exactly go to the person, it's toward the Supreme Lord who's within the heart of that person. But supposing I don't see that, it's offense. Supposing I neglect, someone comes as a guest, and I'm, neglectful. And, I'm looking out the window and twiddling my thumbs and answering text messages or, things that people do. Because we're busy and we got to use time properly, right? So, neglect. There's consequence. That's the second of the 2 options. Even within his mind, he's, according to Agni Purana. And in that moment, I did not pay obeisances in my mind and respect him properly. Then there's the external. Once it's in the mind, what's inside comes outside. You say something, do something that acknowledges your presence with that person. You're being spiritually present with that person, not just, moment. It's subtle. And there's consequences. At least according to Agni Purana, the father of Shravan Kumar recognized this misfortune came to me because of possibly these 2 offenses. God appears in front of us as in 2 forms, the deity and the devotee. If someone tries to serve God, we should treat him on the same level as God. Because all these reasons that we've been discussing. Through this Agni Purana reference, Jiva Goswami gives us a warning about how careful we should be. Engage in bhakti, engage in deity worship, fantastic. And don't neglect the other. And if there's neglect of the other, there can be consequences. There will be consequences of different varieties of consequences. Here's another reference this is from Mahabharata. Nice reference, says the same thing. The pure person who does not disturb others, just as a father is compassionate to his son, quickly gains the mercy of the Lord. So this is on the positive side. This respect, the text 27 indicating the cure. To respect and being conscious to not disturb others. Supposing you're not conscious, you disturb others. It doesn't have to be with malice. Sometimes it's with malice. That's just dvesha. Ill-wishing another person and then vilifying that other person. So those are grosser forms. But then there's the positive. Like a father is compassionate to his son. That's completely natural. Is it natural? It's completely natural. Jiva Goswami tests two things. That's in this Agni Purana reference. Kapila is going to repeat the same thing in verse 25. Compassion, like that of a father towards a son, that is feeding and taking care. And the other, two things. Don't disturb others by careless speech. Be gentle. And be careful with your speech. That's just well behaved. Something my mother taught me. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Have you heard that one? Yeah. My mother taught me. And anybody who is culturing goodness in those who hear from them, that's their speech. And that's also how they conduct themselves. Say something nice. Even if you have to make some correction, say it nice. This is Kapila's solution. So 25, 26, 27. Kapila previously said in 4 verses through 24. So now the solution starts with 25. How devotional service is useless if one does not respect other living entities and only worships the deity. But here he's saying worship the deity. Performing his prescribed duties, one should worship the deity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead until one realizes my presence in his heart and in the heart of other living entities as well. How long is that going to take? Well, it's going to take as long as it's going to take. That's how long it'll take. And for different persons, it'll take less, and different persons, it'll take long. And some persons take lifetimes. But that's the target. And when you fire your arrow, your life towards, be sure what the target is. What's the target? See the Supreme Lord within other living entities and within your own heart and relate accordingly. Repeating, for 4 verses, Kapila said that there's no use in worshiping the deity without respecting others. Here he tells us to worship the deity. Some people may think I should stop deity worship because it's useless. That's not the message. Other people think, Devarshi Bhutapta Rinam Pratrinam. I don't have to do other things because I'm doing this nice thing. That I can give up duties when performing worship of a deity. Here's the advice. It's not Swa Karma Krit. Perform your duties. in conjunction with performing duties until one understands that he, the Supreme Lord, is in the hearts of all living entities. It's kind of repetitious, but the repetition is, my experiences, is sometimes necessary for clear understanding. Prabhupada says like that. This verse is very important because it tells the limits of Vaidhi Bhakti. The result of Vaidhi Bhakti is that one will see Krishna in the heart of all living entities if you do Vaidhi Bhakti properly. So there's a practitioner of Bhakti. He's got his nice bead bag, chanting the holy name, and he's able to see the Supreme Lord within all living entities. Until one sees the Lord situated in everyone's heart, one should do regulated devotional service. We really have to see the Lord. Now, what does it mean to see the Lord? It's not with these eyes, it's another seeing. What does it mean to perform one's duty? Duty means we should follow Vedic culture and Varnashram Dharma. She's going to tell you all about Varnashram Dharma. Not everything, but, the principles of, the necessity of. Huh? Okay, and the necessity of following the principles. Stay tuned for her class. That's the afternoon session. Okay. And here's some items. There's many items in Varnashram. Respect parents, respect elders. We'll spend some time on that topic. Following rules of Varnashram Dharma will make us into gentle human beings, at least if we follow properly and have good teachers and examples. We will learn how to respect. Respect is a very important feature of Vedic culture. Vedic culture is a supportive culture of devotion. There's a direct culture of devotion, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. But before our heart is clean, we should follow the supportive culture. One of the main features in Vedic culture is respect elders and everyone else, according to Vedic rules. A cultured person offers respect. And special respect, we'll hear the reasons why, but besides it's just nice. That's how nice people, cultured people do, so because we follow what the cultured people do. But there's blessings that can come from those who are elder and wise. And we don't respect, there's some bad things can also come from older people. But older and wise people, so we offer respect in principle. It's just culture. And then there's an internal culture. And the external is nice, but keep going, it's not sufficient. Then what's the internal culture? 26. We skipped a verse. We went through 25, now 26. As the blazing fire of death, I cause great fear to whoever makes the least discrimination between himself and other living entities because of a differential outlook. The differential outlook. That's this, you see in the third line, Bina Drisha, Bina Drisho, differential outlook. We're going to be spending substantial time on what does that mean. Prabhupada gave a literal translation. Here, go back. See Odaram in the color-coded verse, Antar. Udaram. Udaram. The word for word in Prabhupada's BBT publication, it's the body, udaram. However, a literal meaning is stomach. If we differentiate between our stomach, the feeding, the gift giving of prasadam, of food, of nourishment to the body, goes to the stomach. We make a differential consideration, this bhina drisha, between ourselves and others, then I will come to you with blazing fear and terrible death. Like, that's pretty scary, huh? That's the Supreme Lord saying. So there are two basic components to Vedic culture: feed others like yourself, and respect everyone, especially senior persons. This is like a lawyer building a case, right? And here's some evidence to build the case. Be respectful and give gifts to others. And, don't differentiate between yourself and others. Do two simple things. Feed others and respect everyone. That's Vedic culture. That's what is in this verse, and that's what's in the other teachings we're going to hear shortly, including Chanakya Pandit. So here's a problem, or here's two big problems. Attachment, raga and dvesha. Attachment and aversion. We're attached to our enjoyment, and we have hatred for those things that stand in the way of our enjoyment. We have aversion to those things. So Vedic culture is to get rid of those two things. How do you cure raga? Well, feed others. Wait a minute. How does feeding others help us become free from raga? The cure is to feed others before feeding ourselves. You place others in this position where they're important, and therefore you treat them as very important. We can temple our raga this way. It's a cultural point. It's not a silver bullet, but it's a cultural point. Those that want to overcome this raga tendency, covetousness of my being the enjoyer, serve others. And one of those basic ways to serve others is food. Like, we maintain ourselves through eating. You have to have something to eat. So you give your one of two shirts from your closet, or you can give prasadam. It's not like, food for life advertisement. It's a principle of culture. And there are different ways of doing that very thing, just like our Sunday feasts. We may ask for sponsors for the Sunday feast, that's fine. But Krishna Prasadam for everyone, etc. When we do this, there's a great experience of love, and we will be much happier doing this. When feeding others, when you're cooking, you're completely satisfied. You're the cook, or you're one of the cooks. And you want to see, is everyone happy? So you help serve out the prasadam. You don't go off and eat first. There's a satisfaction that comes from feeding others. And then our material raga is controlled by feeding others first. We put our stomach before others, then raga increases. The feeding part. And dvesha, this is a recommendation. Bhaktivinoda Thakur this is a way of explaining what Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains. Respect others. Behave in a very humble and gentle way. For example, in Vedic culture, the husband and wife address each other in a plural way. And this is going to take a little bit of explanation, because I wanted to know, what does that mean? Husband and wife in Vedic culture address each other in a plural way. This is a sign of respect. Even if the husband and wife fight, because there's respect, the fighting doesn't escalate. Respect helps us get rid of the disease of hatred or dvesha. So there's the elder and there's the little children, and everyone's like absorbing the little children because they're little children. But there's the elder also. Again, if we want to get rid of envy within our heart, two things: feed others, respect others. Now here's some detail about this plural way of respecting. And I spent a little bit of time, so I'm sharing with you with a little bit of time that I spent, how to understand that, the plural way. So many of you, one beginning point is Hindi. Now, I don't speak Hindi, but many of you do speak Hindi. So in Hindi, there's a word up, which is a respectful way of addressing you. And then there's tum, also means you, but it conveys less respect. Like you might say to a younger person. I'm looking around the room. Am I getting nods? Got it right? Got it right, okay. I don't speak Hindi, so I just have to, you're my sounding board. And here's an explanation of that from Karnaparva Mahabharata. Stick around, you're going to hear this story more than once. But here's the story. This is Karna Parva, is the section of Mahabharata after Bhishma's demise. Karna becomes the commander-in-chief. There are other commanders, but he's the commander-in-chief. And he's this macho guy. He's got to prove himself. I've been mistreated by others, and I'm going to show I can defeat everybody. Look out, here I come. Mr. Macho. So, and he's on a battlefield, and he's commander-in-chief. And so he has this rampage where he's slaughtering many Pandavas. He sees Yudhisthira. He wants to get Yudhisthira. So he seriously wounds Yudhisthira. He smashes Yudhisthira's chariot. And when Yudhisthira's chariot is smashed, his chariot driver finds another chariot and takes him off the battlefield to heal his wounds. And so he brings some brahmanas, they have their mantras and their herbs, and they're trying to heal his wounds. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, Arjuna hears about Yudhisthira's being harmed by Karna. He's a Kshatriya. He wants to do something. I'm going to go get Karna. Krishna says, wait, before you go get Karna, let's go visit your brother, Yudhisthira, and see how he's doing. So Krishna, the chariot driver, takes him to Karna's tent, and Arjuna enters the tent. And Yudhisthira is really happy. You come bringing good news. Is Karna now finished? Is he dead? And Arjuna says, well, I didn't do anything with Karna yet because I just heard of your misfortune. And for some reason, the Krishna reason, Krishna inspired Yudhisthira to do something that was completely out of character. Yudhisthira is very gentle and humble and well-mannered, and he knows how to do things properly. But he just did the opposite. He started blasting Arjuna for no good reason other than Krishna inspired him to do it. And he started criticizing Arjuna. What kind of warrior are you? You're supposed to be this big hero that was prophesied when you were born, that you got celestial weapons. You got all these celestial weapons, and you got your Gandiva bow, and you can't deal with Karna. You're not a warrior. You should give your Gandiva bow to somebody that's a warrior. Ooh. He insulted him in his wounded condition. So Arjuna became furious. That was another Krishna-inspired event. He said, I've taken a vow that anyone who maligns me in this way and tells me I should give away my Gandiva bow, I'll kill him. That's my vow. So he went to get a sword. And Krishna said, what are you doing? He said, I'm going to kill Yudhisthira. I took a vow. And then they have this whole Mahabharat-like discussion about upholding of vows and when is to be, when is not to be, how do you do it, and, a thing about vows. And the conclusion was that Krishna said, you've taken a vow, so you have to uphold your vow. We'll see the Sanskrit of the verses from Mahabharata. But you can kill him by insulting him. Because one who has been honored, dishonor is worse than death. So go insult him. Krishna told him. He didn't say to say what. Go insult him. And one of the ways he went to insult him was by using this differential language instead of the collective language, or your majesty, that's how it's in English. He just said you, the singular, instead of the broader sense of he's part of the royal family and you're the majesty. That's the English translation. But then in the Hindi translation of that section of Mahabharata, it uses this word tu instead of ap, which was a subtle way of insulting him. And what Arjuna said was not just subtle. Whoa! He did what Krishna said. You are the cause of all this difficulty. You're not a king. Your tendency for gambling resulted in giving away our kingdom and giving away our wife and putting us through all these difficulties for so many years. You're not a qualified king. He insulted him. But it started with this little addressing you in a certain way. Oh, important. Krishna said immediately after insulting him, fall at his feet and apologize. Arjuna didn't even get to that stage of apologizing because he was devastated that this is so out of character, so inappropriate, I should kill myself. So he went to get a sword again. Krishna said, what are you doing? You have service to do. You have to protect the kingdom of your elders by executing your dharma. Put that sword away. Here's what you should do. Go in before Yudhisthira and praise yourself. That's killing yourself. Got it? Don't use the sword. Use words. Praise yourself. Then he praised himself and he fell at Yudhisthira's feet. Begged forgiveness. And Yudhisthira said, no need to ask for forgiveness because everything you said is true. I'm unfit to be king. So you said Bhima could become a better king, so let Bhima become king. I'm leaving to the forest. He got up and left. And Krishna ran after him. Yudhisthira, where are you going? And then Krishna apologized to Yudhisthira. Yudhisthira couldn't take it. Krishna's, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is apologizing to me? He said, because I'm the one it instructed the instrument, Arjuna, to speak these words to you. So I'm the cause, not Arjuna. So please forgive me. And Yudhisthira started to cry and fell to the ground and said, you've rescued both Arjuna and I were speaking and acting impetuously. and you protected both of us. But Krishna was the cause behind both of them speaking the way that they spoke and doing what they did. It's a Leela to help them understand and help us understand a lesson. No, the lesson you see at the top. It's the beginning of the offense was how he was addressed. So this text at the top says in Hindi it's clear, but most of us, the scriptural authority is from the Sanskrit. So here's the Sanskrit right on the screen. Yudhisthira, O great king, does not deserve to be slain, nor, O Partha, can your vow be destroyed. Therefore insult him in this matter by a slight act alone. For the honor of the virtuous while living is dearer than life itself. He whose honor remains is said to live. By dishonor, one is said to die. There's no doubt about this. So kill him by speaking something nasty. And then here's this, the singular is this tvam. So that was in the Sanskrit. Because if self-praise is also a form of death for a spiritual seeker, after insulting Yudhisthira, Arjuna felt deep remorse and wanted to kill himself. Krishna then, go praise yourself, that's killing yourself. When he did, he was shameful. Anyway, we told the narration. So all of that was a diversion. The topic is, by respect, husband to wife, or in a family, or in a community, in concentric circles can go out, speaking with respect is a form of protection of oneself and others. Sometimes something needs to be said. Do it respectfully, in the same way that Kapila Deva is speaking in text 26. And again, these two terms, mana and dana. Mana is respect, commonly respect to elders, Vedic culture. Dana is giving charity, a gift, dana, or food. Srila Prabhupada says, dana is usually towards juniors, that was in his purport, but it does not mean that we don't feed seniors. We respect juniors as well as seniors. And certainly Prabhupada did like that. He was cooking for the guests. He's the spiritual master, cooking for the fledgling new devotees. And I was told, I didn't have that privilege of taking what he had, but his cooking was excellent. And people were going, yum, yum, yum. Let's go back again to the Hare Krishna temple because there's yummies at the end. So there's text 27, dana, mana, and abhayam. That's the verse again. Therefore, through charitable gifts and attention, dana and mana, as well as through friendly behavior, and by viewing all to be alike, one should propitiate me, who abide in all our creatures as their very capital S self. So here's two images. The modern one, there's an elderly lady being respected by a young lady. And at the bottom, here's a young fellow honoring a sadhu. The form is culturally appropriate, but the principle is universal. So we're going to hear from Urmila about some principles she took off, some principles about Varnashram. Further on text 27, this is, the first word in the verse is ata, or therefore. So Arhayad, you have to worship me. How should you worship him? Dana manabhyam. Maitrya chakshusha. Don't discriminate between yourself and others. Look with equal vision. Don't be a separatist. Don't be egotistic. Don't be the center of the universe. Develop a different approach to living entities. Dana manabhyam. Give food to everyone and give some gifts. It's amazing how people are pleased when you give them something. Their heart completely softens. I'm going to tell a little story. Stories are nice. Once upon a time, a few years ago, like 20 years ago, I was visiting for the first time in Singapore. There were some devotees that I knew in Singapore because they were connected with the NIU, National Institute of NUI. Anyway, the university in Singapore, National University. So they were students there, and they had a daughter. One of the families had a daughter. So to fly from the USA to Singapore, it's a long flight. And when I got to the other end, I was exhausted and dirty, yucky, So I went to take a shower first thing. While I'm putting on my dhoti, taking a shower, there's a little girl. And she did knock on the door. She just came in while I was putting on my dhoti because she couldn't wait. She had a gift. And the gift was a string of plastic beads of different colors, different sizes, and all strung together. And that was her gift. And my heart melted because I understood what that meant to her. It was like she couldn't wait. I didn't say, "Can you knock first?" Thank you very much. And to this day, I remember it. I remember the emotion. I remember the exchange. The meaningfulness was not the item. It was the enthusiasm of giving a gift. And it touches the heart of someone. If you're not just mechanically, but in a mood of a gesture of reciprocation. It's right in Rupa Goswami's teachings, isn't it? Dadati, Pratyagranati, Goyamakyati. There's symmetry in the Acharya's writings. They have different ways of saying, but that's a principle. Kapila Deva is saying, Dana manabhyam. Give food to everyone and give some gifts. Give respect. Sometimes when we give some fruit to a completely unknown person, the reaction is amazing to watch. They don't need fruit, but they sense what you're doing. It's an exchange of love. When we don't feel love, by giving, we will feel love. It's true. It's just one of those things that's true. Maitri, that's friendliness. It's one of those different words in Sanskrit that express friendship. Maitri, develop it. Don't see others as competitors, but see others as potential, at least, as friends. In India, we still see personal kind of friendliness. People in the West don't even say hello. Prabhupada, this is a nice reference. Sometimes, well, you know this. Prabhupada had 2 heart attacks crossing the ocean later on, after some time in New York, he had a third heart attack, and he was taken to a place along the Jersey Shore where it was warm, and he convalesced from his third heart attack. So a physician, a cardiologist, recommended, if you don't, you have to exercise every day for at least an hour, a brisk walk. And if you don't do that, you're finished. The fourth time, you're finished. So please. So Prabhupada did it. That was early in his, so every day, rain or shine or snow or whatever, he would go for a walk. And one of those places he did was in London. And one of the things that he did in London was he was walking sometimes, most of the times you go to a park, nice scenery and all that. Sometimes it was on the street. When he was walking on the street, he would say hello. And then sometimes devotees asked, why is it you don't say Hare Krishna instead of hello? And Prabhupada's answer was, because if I say Hare Krishna, they'll think I'm sectarian. But if I say hello, they respond and say hello, good morning. And this way their devotional service has begun. So Prabhupada was thinking of their welfare, not just, and a greeting, Maitri. And by establishing friendship, then friendships can grow. Some persons it just means, doesn't mean anything. And some persons a relationship can grow. And this is the way of Vaishnava culture. Respect everyone, feed everyone, be friendly, be courteous to everyone. This way we will very quickly understand that God is present in everyone's heart. In principle, not just a behavior and mechanical behavior, but in principle. We'll be able to see him relate with love. Jumping over this sort of attitude, one will not be able to develop love of God. You've seen this painting before. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu feeding a dog. The stray dog from Shivananda Sain's party coming to visit Puri for Rath Yatra. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so powerful, he would command the dog to chant Hare Krishna. So the dog would, Krishna! And he threw some coconut pulp. The dog was chewing the coconut pulp, Mahaprasad from the hand of Lord Chaitanya. He became an advanced devotee. And on the you see the painting. There's Shivananda Sain seeing the scene, and he pays obeisances to the dog. Look at the time. It's 20 minutes after 9. And I'm over time. What to do? I'm going to finish. That's what I'm going to do. Culture of respect was all pervasive in Vedic culture. Unfortunately, it's practically gone now. People used to worship mountains, other living entities. Here they're worshiping an elephant, they're worshiping the sun. A man at Govardhan Hill was crawling up on his knees on the hill, and somebody wanted to say, what's this guy doing? And they saw he had some flour, rice flour, mixed with sugar to feed the ants. This man is very special. Srila Prabhupada's father, he was a cloth merchant. One of the things his father did is he made arrangements so the rats and snakes could have something to eat. When they ate from what Prabhupada's father gave him, they didn't eat holes in his cloth. So maybe they thought they were part of the family, would like to eat his cloth. And Prabhupada also taught, deity worship, but respect other living entities. That's teaching, is a Vaishnava teaching. His father was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Vaishnava. Well, here's another example. We're going to almost end. You know the story. Bhima was sent by Draupadi to find the source of this 1,000-petaled lotus that was floating down the river. So he went up the hill to find the source of that 1,000-petaled lotus that were growing somewhere up there. When he was moving on the path, there was a monkey. And, there's different images showing the monkey. But Bhima asked, my dear monkey, can you move? The monkey said, oh, I'm too old. You can just step over me. But Bhima was understanding within the heart of the monkey is the Supreme Lord. So he couldn't step over the monkey's tail even because it was disrespectful to the Supreme. Cultured person, cultured behavior. As powerful as Bhima was, he was also cultured. Culture of respect is based on the understanding that God is everywhere. Notice the repetition. Purposeful. He maintains in a different way. So following, there's 6.5 verses where Kapila is going to be discussing gradations of living entities. This was Dayal Mukunda's question yesterday. Gradations, where we recognize distinctions of species or coverings. Respecting all does not mean we respect equally. We respect lower species in our mind, etc. The whole evolutionary ladder of development of consciousness is described right in Kapila's teachings, right in this chapter 29. We must respect everyone, no matter how low on the consciousness scale they may be, but we must try to understand who is closer to God. Development of consciousness is based on one's closeness to God. So, if someone is close to God, we should never disrespect them, or ignore, or neglect. Don't ever think of offending such a person. Spiritual suicide. Whew. Concluding words. How to see God in every living entity? Initially, we don't see God in other living entities or human beings. But what is most important is that we should remember that He is there. If we are mindful and conscious about this, it's a sign that we have faith. We'll hear more about faith in the evening session. Faith is our protection. If we behave contrary to this understanding, specifically towards human beings, especially devotees, then we are like faithless atheists. Not good. Finally, to see God everywhere means we have to have faith that He is everywhere and try to see Him everywhere. God is in the heart of every living entity. Therefore, we have no right to hate anyone or look down on anyone. That's this avagya principle, text 21. How can we hate or look down upon anything or anyone where God is there? If we want to love God, we have to love His creation. It is very contradictory to worship God and not see Him everywhere. So here's a quote from the Bible. If anyone says, I love God, yet he hates his brother, he's a liar. For anyone who does not love his brother, whom he has seen, cannot love God. He whom He has not seen, and He has given us this command: whoever loves God must also love his brother. And Srila Prabhupada exemplified. In the midst of hippies, a cultured Vaishnava, from the upbringing that he had from his father, he was perfectly fine being in any audience at any time with respect to the personality of Godhead who was within their heart. And that's our founder Acharya, that's our movement, that's our mandate also. We don't have to exactly do what Prabhupada did, but in principle, to work our way towards unmixed devotional service, there's a procedure. And respect is that channel. $9.26. Comments or questions? Whoa, Premananda. Premananda. We have to end. Because Urmila has to speak next. Okay. What? Okay. Those of you that have your hand up, write it down. Sorry. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.